Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda for this study session.
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
All right. All in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
All right.
Deanna, what's going on?
All right, so to bring you just back up to speed, I included a hard copy of the superintendent's budget guidelines that we discussed, I think, back in January, and have kind of used throughout the process as we've looked at budget development for next year, and we'll continue to use because we're headed towards a preliminary budget being developed by the end of June so that we meet the timelines for that preliminary budget to be presented by July 10th, which is a requirement to the ESD. And Dan will be continuing to work with that with Christine when she comes on board. And then that budget will be adjusted as we get more information. And the final budget will be approved by the board in the August board meeting. But so we're moving along in the process. And we are still looking at budgeting to make up some funding, and I'll be talking about that in just a little bit. So I just wanted you to have the guidelines in front of you again, because it explains in there how and when we decide to make adjustments to our budget based on things that are happening that have impacted us negatively. So that's where we are. And then you have a one-pager that discusses the budget planning and where we are as of today in front of you. Rob, I have an extra handout if you want a copy. There you go. So, as we've been talking about, our enrollment for 2024-25 came in lower than we expected, particularly in kindergarten and ALE. And we made the adjustments that we could in the budget at that point in time. However, some of the things you've already got staff, you've already got things in place, so you can't adjust everything backwards, and we had to work throughout the year to make adjustments to bring our expenditures down more in line with the actual revenues so that we could end up in a pretty good place. And as Dan will talk about again in his presentation tonight, we're making really strong progress in that area to get where we need to be. But as we plan for 25-26, we still have about 1.3 million in overall costs that were a part of that adjustment that we need to make because of enrollment that we need to fix in the coming year to get us back to the board required 8 to 10, typically board required 8 to 10% ending fund balance. Right now we're running at just over 5% projection for the end of the year, which is within the 4 to 6 that the board approved as we adjust this. But to get back to that 8 to 10% gets us into a place where we have the right, at least appropriate number of days for an emergency of operating costs. And we want to try to keep that above 30 days, if not closer to 45, 50, which we were able to do in the past few years until this year. This year, as of March, we were running at 22 days. And we have improved since then, but it's still a little bit scary and we need to get back into firmer conditions. So we have that 1.3 million plus then due to the loss of levy, we have about another $3 million in adjustments that we need to make. So a total of 4.3 million in expenditures for next year so that we can keep our expenditures and our revenues in line and be building back towards that appropriate fund balance to meet the board requirements and to put us in a safe fiscal place as well. So what we've talked about so far were savings due to staffing adjustments. And between adjustments with certificated admin and classified staff, we're at just over $3 million in total adjustments and through decreases in staffing positions for next year. So we decreased in each of those areas and combined some jobs and did some things to bring those costs down for the district. And so certificated staff who have been impacted have all already been made aware. Where we have had resignations or retirements, we took those into account to help lessen the impact on folks that were newer to the profession if possible. And we've had really good partnership with NMEA in working together with staff as we move through this process. And I want to thank them for that. Now we completed the planning for the classified adjustments that are going to happen, and those individual conversations will happen with Nate and appropriate supervising admin during the remainder of this week, so that each person will hear about, that is impacted, will hear about that in person rather than just with a piece of paper or an email. All of the positions, we also are building a plan for bringing things back when we find out if we have more money, whether through passing the levy or other things happen, if we have greater enrollment than we anticipate right now. And so those kinds of things. So there is also a plan being built to how do we bring back the positions and the things that we need to best support the needs of our kids over time. So that's all of the work that's gone so far. But with those staffing adjustments at just over 3 million, we still have approximately 1.3 million to really bring that total to the target that we set with the board of 4.3 million in reductions and adjustments. And so we are looking at doing that in a number of ways. And I've written a summary for you tonight, and I'll go through the summary and then we can talk about it a little bit. These are all moves that we anticipate needing to make, but there are things that, you know, we need to get your input on as well.
Can I ask just a question about how
Yes.
this is laid out? Is the athletics and activities proposed that numbered? Is that examples of the bullet points above it?
That's the example of that bullet point.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just fleshing that out because I knew that would be an area where there would be a lot of questions. So, and some of the others are easier to talk about. So like the first bullet point is limiting student laptop purchases. So we have a plan in place to have laptops distributed in a certain way to students so that they have them to use from when they need it all through all of the grades. So right now, we're not purchasing a whole grade level of new laptops next year, but looking at using the laptops that we have at least to start the year, and purchasing just a limited number, approximately 60 devices, to have enough for breakage, damage, things need to be worked on, that kind of thing, as we start the year. Hopefully, we will make that adjustment sooner when the board and the district is successful with the levy, but we're also looking for other ways to address that need as well. So that's a significant savings, and so that's on there to start with. Then we're looking at athletics, activities, and field trip reductions, and I'll talk about those in a little bit further down the page. In the curriculum and materials department, specifically for teaching and learning, we're looking at savings of just over 240,000 because for a number of reasons. We can limit that because of the curriculums that its turn for adoption is one that usually costs a lot less, so we can plan for that. We're also limiting what other expenditures we would have for curriculum materials in the coming year. So we're cutting that down by about 240 there. So subscription and app cancellations. So subscriptions and apps that we have found to be useful but maybe aren't necessary are that we can do things in a smarter way by combining using one app for more than for multiple things instead of having so many apps that not just the ones that parents and kids use, but the ones we use behind the scenes and the subscriptions we use that support our maintenance scheduling and all of those kinds of things. So we're combining all of that and saving just about 130,000 on that, right, Dan?
I have 113,
113, thank you.
113, almost 114.
Yeah.
Are any, or what about the what apps that, like Parent Square and ones?
We're still having Parent Square, and we'll use it for more things, but
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have Parent Square, but we're not gonna do POSSUP. We're not going to use the student monitoring part of Gaggle. So, things like that.
Do we have a list of those?
I do. Can you pull that up? I can get it just a second, and I will read it to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to Jackie.
No, I don't want to project the chart. Dan, I don't want to project the chart, so let me just,
a snippet of the list.
yeah. Do you have just the list? Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, so I'm just copy pasting that into.
Okay. And so then we're looking at some contracted services savings. We've been working throughout the year to find less expensive sources of contracted services. And typically those are services that we use to provide support to students when we can't get people to apply to be direct employees. So that's often things like school psychs, SLPs, speech and language pathologists, those kinds of positions. So we have been using convenient contracting groups like our ESD, but our ESD frankly is about the most expensive provider of contracted services there is. So we have found quality providers that cost us less. And so we're seeing savings in that area of about approximately $350,000. So, and I want to go back to when I was talking about savings in the limiting the student laptop area, we're looking at saving about $261,000 by only purchasing those necessary replacement laptops. So the list Dan put up there, so it includes SCUDA, which is a tracking tool the counselors were using but weren't finding particularly useful. They can do the tracking of how they do their day through Teams or other Microsoft tools that we already have. The Thought Exchange, POSSUP, Frontline Analytics, parts of School Dude, Seesaw, part of Gaggle, and those are the main ones that we're looking at.
So are we gonna lose, cause I know that one is your historical tracker, that School Dude thing is your historical tracker of all IT ticketing systems and all that. Are we gonna lose any
No,
of
we're
that
gonna make
data?
sure we copy all of that
Okay.
first before the end of the year.
Cause that's super important to make sure that we have
Yes.
historicals of, hey, this model of laptop has had this specific problem or this app. I know
Yes,
troubleshooting wise, that's huge.
yes. No, Dan is working with the team on that.
Okay.
And there's some other ones where we want to keep historical background too, so.
That's super important.
Yeah, all right, so then, we're also looking at midday transportation, cutting midday runs. For example, at the Skills Center right now, we're running a bus every day. Fewer than 8 students ride that bus on a regular basis. So yes, that's problematic for those 8 students, but it's not cost effective for the district to run a bus for 8 students.
Is that West Own Tech, the skill center?
Skills Center, yeah, West Sound Tech. And so that's approximately $50,000 in savings. We're looking at other midday runs as well, like the midday run for the preschool program. We're looking at whether we need midday runs for other activities that happen down at Beller, and each of those is being considered individually as to whether they need to be continued or need to be looked at for at least the start of next year.
Or the kids will still get to go to the skill center, but they have to just find their own.
Yes, and a lot of the kids already do, which is why only 8 kids are riding the bus. So,
Carpools and stuff.
yeah, and that's not something we want to be in, and we can certainly look at it as much less expensive to use a van instead of a bus. So we could still save a considerable amount of money there. So those are things we can look at as we're planning going forward. And then we're also reducing building budgets. And so by 10%, so that will save about almost $47,000 there. So all of that adds up to roughly $1,356,000.
Is that 10%
so
at each school for the buildings, each one?
So what does that reduction look like, and what is that?
The building
what's
budget
yeah,
reduction?
What is that reducing? Is it reducing just material? Is it reducing?
Buildings have discretion over how they use those dollars, so they might use them for some specific professional development. They might use it to purchase books for a book study. They might use it to purchase materials for kid activities. They might use it to fund family events. They might use it to fund, what are other things they do with their,
Just like Post-it notes and.
Furniture.
Or erasers and things like that, or at the elementaries, maybe they're using it for, poster board to put up in the hallways, things like that as well.
Furniture. Like, the high school this year is using some of their dollars to replace some of the soft furniture that in the cafeteria that hasn't lasted very well since the rebuild. Our buildings they typically have carryover every year in their fund balance, in their building budgets, so they'll just have to be a little more careful. And
You said that total was, what was the total in that, Dan? That save?
The total combined, 46,580.
Okay.
yeah. So all of those things that I just talked about together are just over 1.3 million. Okay? And they could be a little up or down as things adjust in their costs, but right around 1.3 million. So I want to talk a little bit, because we've sat down and kind of had a couple of discussions about what does the part mean to talk about cutting into athletics and activities and field trips. So we've listed 11 of the ways that those will be adjusted by making some changes here. We would talk about having no middle school JV teams to start the year, no high school C teams. At the secondary school level, which is both middle and high school, all sports will lose one assistant coach stipend unless that sport only has one assistant coach. So like football has multiple assistant coaches. Basketball tends to have a head coach and an assistant coach. So they would still have a head coach and an assistant coach. But sports that have a third or, additional coaches beyond the one of each would lose one.
And that's just paid coach. That's
Paid
not
stipends.
Volunteer coach.
Not volunteer coaches. And in fact, some sports at some buildings, the coaches get together and choose to split a stipend, so they have multiple people paid by that stipend. So I wanted to be really clear to say they're losing one stipend.
Getting one stipend.
Yeah, no away travel for high school junior varsity teams unless they're traveling on the bus with the varsity. So that sometimes happens, for example, with basketball. That rarely happens on a counterexample with football.
Does that mean that they would have to find their own transportation, or they just don't have away games?
Well, Rob is planning to notify people that we will be glad to host games here,
Okay. Okay.
okay? It will limit the amount of contests that JV teams participate in. We're also gonna say that we should prioritize using vans over buses. It's a significant savings. And so, many times they can use just vans to transport the teams, so we're gonna have them try to do that where possible. The high school would also look at all non-conference competitions and need to have those approved by the AD. So some of the high school sports, particularly the more individual sports, have a lot of non-conference competitions that they like to go to or they need to go to get the number of opportunities to compete in. For example, wrestling usually has about 3 league meets overall, and the rest of the meets they have are non-league. So we're not saying we're canceling all of those, but they would have to be specifically approved by the AD in accordance with the budget that we set for next year for athletics. Secondary schools also would have no away travel for music events unless they were paid for by ASB or the boosters. And we are looking at, we will add capacity for additional sections of instruction at Hawkins Middle School by reducing elementary band.
Does that mean that the Hawkins teacher had been going to
He's been,
elementary?
kids have been coming before elementary school starts and doing a period with him in his, out of his schedule and not out of their teachers' schedules.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and then
If-
we've been giving them a bus ride back to the elementary schools.
Right, right.
If there's a future event and they needed to use a bus, but it's something that we had to cut, is it something they can do a fundraiser for and potentially come up with the money to use a bus? Can they do something like that?
It would depend. There's a lot of rules to follow,
I
so,
know.
That's, that
yeah.
gets into some weird.
yeah. We look at club travel being funded only by CTE or ASB. So we have clubs that do competitions like
Robotics.
robotics or, Knowledge Bowl. So those would be funded either through ASB or CTE.
Previously, they had been funded through.
Mostly they already are,
Yeah.
but we just want to be really clear about it. There's more of the savings are in
Okay.
the athletics area, but we want to make sure that the rules are really clear so people aren't feeling that any one group is being targeted. New uniform rotation for athletics will be put on pause, and the new sport adoption is put on pause. And so we're
Right.
really excited about one new sport, and we're hoping that it's a winter sport. And maybe the district will have passed the levy by then, and we can consider adding girls' flag football now that it's an approved sport by WIAA. But for right now, that would be on pause. And then finally, we're gonna bring in probably not a ton of money because right now we don't, but increasing our facility rentals use fees to the league and regional average. And because right now we are very low, that's why people from all over Kitsap County want to rent our fields and spaces. So we're gonna increase our field fees and also make sure that we fully charge each group for the custodial time that they're using. So that'll probably bring in another 30,000. So not a huge amount, but it makes a statement that we need those things to pay for themselves to continue to be able to do them. So that's the list.
You guys got any questions?
I don't really have questions, actually.
I would like to, and not tonight, but you can just shoot me an email with the specifics on the material savings. I just saw the subscription one and the contract services. I just kinda like to see, right, particulars around those. Don't have to do it right now.
What was the question?
more particulars, like particulars around like, hey, the curriculum savings, what are we specifics, right? Instead of just the thing, what contract services, list them out, like what they are, on what, and, you know, what they do. Maybe just a quick one-liner of what
Yeah.
the thing is, right?
And those are still, part of the contracted service, all of this is as of today.
Right.
So some of those are still up in the air because every year for everything that we contract for, like school psychs and SLPs and all of those specialty nurses, every year we advertise for those to try to hire our own employees first. And then when we can't, we go to the contracts.
Okay.
So, right now, we know that if we compared prices from the previous contracting agency to the one we've transitioned to, that we would have those kinds of savings in contracted positions. But we'll still see, we're hoping that we have more employees who become our employees rather than contracted service employees for those areas. But we'll send you what we have on that. And curriculum materials, this year is the arts adoption and PE. Kyle?
Next year we were gonna be looking into like high school, math, but those are gonna be on pause, and that's where a lot of that savings comes in.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Very good.
All right.
Anybody, anything? Okay.
No,
Well,
thank
that was
you.
a
All right,
short
well,
study session.
we will call this meeting adjourned and be back here in a half an hour to start our normal board meeting.
.30, we'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
All right. Is there any discussion about the agenda? All right, all in favor of approving the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, the agenda is approved. Nicole will be here a little late. She is on her way from Olympia, so she's excused. Is there any public comments, Jackie? No. Nope, all right. Student board members are not here, so we will move past that. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
All right, any discussion?
No.
Nope. You good? Wow. Made it around quick. And I'm good as well. All right, all in favor of approving the consent agenda as written signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda is passed. Belfair Elementary presentation.
So we have our presentation. We decided to really focus in on celebrations. This is a first year for both of us in the positions we're in. And so there's a lot of learning we still have left to do. So we decided to take the aspect of what good things are happening at Belfair Elementary. So we wanted to note that one thing that we've really worked hard on this year is working with Jane Adams, our counselor, to really build up our lunch bunch and our breakfast club. And so on the one side, you can see she has sometimes 40 kids that pass through for breakfast club, and they are learning, a lot of them brush their teeth, they have combs of their own, and toothbrushes, and they're brushing and they're combing, and she has a big mirror, so they're checking themselves, telling themselves they look good before they leave for the day to start class, and it's made a huge difference in a lot of our kids' days as they walk out the door. And then this is what the room looks like. She's now in another classroom, and she made it, once she knew she had to leave this room because we were gonna use it for a testing site, she quickly, within about 20 minutes, converted another space to do just the same thing. So it's been a phenomenal step in the right direction for our kids.
How are those kids identified?
They are identified usually through our MTSS process. And then celebrating our MLL community. This is a big one for us this week. This was our MLL family night. We had quite a few families. This was just the beginning of it. And we had a lot of families show up. We had to take out more and more tables. So celebrating that night and the performance that the kids put on and the learning that they had been doing was amazing. They were very proud of everything they've been doing. And then the big news, oops, I think that didn't take. There was a picture that was after that one, but I'm not sure. Oh, well, it's okay if not. The big news that we have for our MLL students was that 8 of them just passed the WIDA. So that was huge.
Wonderful.
And so today Christy and I went in, and we gave them their certificates, and they were so proud. They were
That's
so
awesome.
excited. It was amazing. So I had a picture on there. I'm not sure why it didn't stick, but that's okay. The other thing we wanted to celebrate was our, there they are, there it is. On number 4. There it is. So there were
Aw.
6 of them present today, and we celebrated with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. The best thing we heard was one of them who told the other one, "You're so lucky you passed this before you were in 5th grade, because it just gets harder." It was really cute. So they're ready to prepare their younger siblings how to pass the WIDA. So it was great. And then our attendance, we really wanted to celebrate that because that's been growing and growing and getting better. And so we celebrated so far in the month of May, we're at 92%, which we were really happy because we had set that at 90%. And so we were really, really pleased with that. Our, this is our scores and iReady for our fall to winter. So we have been making exponential growth in that way. And so I don't know if you can read it, but it just showed from the bottom the dots where the percentage was at, and then it increased as we went into the winter testing. And then we have begun our spring testing. And so far I just took a snippet of what that looks like on the next slide. And on the next slide, so that's fall to winter. This one is fall to spring, so the growth we've made from fall to spring. But this is only 158 students so far tested when I took this snippet because the other kids are involved in their state testing right now. But even just looking at that, we were really thrilled to see the growth that's happened across the school in math. ELA, we had a really big celebration with our 5th grade team. So they have just kept growing in their ELA scores, and so this is their most recent for 5th grade right now. And I think, is that my last one? So that was our celebrations. We have more, but these are the ones that we really sat down and really spoke to us.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's really
thank you.
cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And before you guys step down, I want to thank
Is it
you
a
guys.
celebration?
Yeah, no, this is, well, it's sad, but I want to commend you guys on the tragic events that happened in front of your school,
Oh, my God.
and how you and your team handled it,
Thank you.
with all the kids. I think it's important to highlight that is just amazing. And everybody that stepped up is just, I can't say enough, right, to say how awesome that was. So, thank you
That was a
guys.
team.
Yeah,
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
thank you.
all right. Moving on to Board and Development Superintendent update.
All right, and we are going to start with the teaching and learning update. And since we don't have our student members here, we will skip the student board member award. Kyle, you're up.
All right, so this is a really cool one that we get to share out today. I think it was last week or the week before, we had a post that we put on Facebook that talked about the Washington Schools Recognition Program. And I want to do a quick video that the state sent out just to kind of give everybody here an idea about what the Washington State Honored Schools looks like. So, I think Jackie, you might have to scroll over and click on play.
I'm Bill Clapp, Chair of the Washington State Board of Education. On behalf of the Board, Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the Educational Opportunity Gap Oversight and Accountability Committee, I want to congratulate your school for being honored by the Washington State School Recognition Program for the 2023-2024 school year.
Hey everyone, Chris Rakedale, Superintendent of Public Schools for the beautiful state of Washington. I want to congratulate all of the school winners this year. Everybody in our state is committed to public education who serves in our buildings, but for 16% of you, just 1 out of every 6 schools, it's a tremendous honor to be recognized. Your commitment to equity, closing gaps, student achievement, leaning into the thing we all know is so powerful around public education, which is serving students, their families, and our communities. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being there every day and for giving your entire professional lives to trying to lift up the lives of all of our students. That's inspiring. You've done it with grace. You've achieved beyond the average for sure. And we are here to recognize you and thank you for everything that you do. Congratulations.
Now you might be wondering, how can a school be recognized by this program? There are 3 ways that schools can be recognized. Schools recognized for closing gaps have made significant progress for all students or specific student groups in areas identified for improvement in previous school years. These areas can include English language arts assessment scores, math assessment scores, English learner progress, dual credit completion, or graduation rates. Schools recognized for growth had at least one student group who saw some of the state's largest gains in annual performance on multiple measures. These include attendance, dual credit completion, ELA and math assessment scores, English learner progress, graduation rates, or the percentage of 9th graders who earned all credits they attempted. Finally, schools recognized for achievement are among the top schools in the state for at least 2 of the following areas: attendance, dual credit completion, English language arts assessment scores, math assessment scores, graduation rates, or the percentage of 9th graders who earned all credits they attempted. No matter why you were recognized, it's a huge accomplishment that took a team of dedicated folks to make it happen. And your great work hasn't gone unnoticed. In fact, Governor Bob Ferguson was so impressed that he wanted to extend a personal congratulations of his own. Governor Ferguson, take it away.
I am Governor Bob Ferguson, and it's really my honor to offer my congratulations to your school for being honored by the Washington State School Recognition Program. Students at your school are not only thriving, they're making incredible strides in key areas of their education. Educators and school leaders worked hard for these wonderful achievements. So did your students. You helped motivate them to put in the work. My mom, my late mother, was a special education school teacher in our public schools for many years. So I know from being her son how challenging it is to be a teacher, but also how rewarding it can be to make a difference in a kid. So I just want to appreciate you on behalf of the people of the state of Washington for your hard work, and congratulations on this really impressive achievement.
So from all of us at the State Board of Education, congratulations! Let's take time to reflect, but mainly celebrate and continue this energy as we move forward.
So like you heard in there, 16% of schools in the entire state were recognized, 406 total schools and 154 school districts, and we get to say big congratulations to Sand Hill Elementary and Hawkins Middle School. Both buildings were honored for closing gaps. Sand Hill was targeted, so in multiple areas on the Washington State Improvement Framework. And for Hawkins, it was closing gaps ELL, so those were percent progressing on the WIDA assessment. And this is for the 23-24 school year. So closing gaps, Washington State, I want to put some more information out there. There were 21 districts and 76 total schools that received it for closing gaps. We had 2 schools within our district that received that honor. This is a nice picture that just shows across the state what it looks like for the amount of schools in each of the ESDs. If you look at where we're at, ESD 114, 14 schools in our entire ESD. I looked it up, we have 109 schools in the entire ESD, and we have 2 buildings within our district that received this honor. So it's another huge congratulations to the staff, students, everybody in the community at both those buildings. So just one more time, a huge congratulations to the staff and students at Hawkins and Sand Hill. I think Dana's going to get the banner in about a week, and then we'll be able to go and present those banners to each of the buildings once we receive those. This is also, the last one that we received for school recognition was the 18-19 school year, so it's a real big deal. A lot of the efforts that our teams have put in is starting to show at our buildings. So,
Very good.
Thank you.
That's excellent.
Thank you, guys.
And I just want to add that in early results, as our buildings and our students are working hard on their state assessments, we're seeing some really positive growth, so we may get more banners next year.
Sweet. That is wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, and one other thing while we're on this part, I do want to bring up that we have a guest today. Kurt Hilliard from the Olympic ESD 114 board is visiting us. Kurt, thank you for visiting. And I know you don't want to say anything, but he did bring to the board, and I have some extras, an accountability report that tells you all the things that our partners at the ESD do to support our school and our district and all the other districts in our region. And we're really fortunate to have them as partners. So thanks for coming.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Are we good to move on to Dan?
Yep.
All right, Dan, you are up.
We are flying.
You are good. I'm glad.
Okay, well, good evening, Board. I'm Dan King, Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. I hope you can bear with me a little bit with my voice. I'm getting over a cold, so I might sound a little scratchy here. I'll do my best, though, tonight. So we're going to start with the budget status report in our other funds, and then follow that with our attendance enrollment. So this budget status report is through April 30th of 2025. And the fund balance in our capital projects fund at the end of April was $160,778. And that's down $14,082 from the previous month. The debt service fund balance at the end of April was $2,488,089. That shows an increase of $1,317,847. That's due to a levy tax collection. Or that's from property taxes collection. The ASB fund balance ended in April with $398,424. That's a decrease of $16,482 since the previous month. The transportation vehicle fund ended with a fund balance of $187,003, an increase of $657 from the previous month. So let's move on to our attendance. So this is our attendance as of our May count at the beginning of the month. So our May 2025 FTE, including Running Start, was 2,240.07. That is a decrease of 19.71 students from the previous month. And that's fairly typical for this time of year as students graduate and move on. There's early graduations, there's some transitions around this time of year that we typically see. The year-to-date average FTE, this is October through May, is 2,277.08. Our May TTK FTE was 33 students. That's down 1 from the past several months where it was pretty steady at 34. Our total enrollment, when we include Running Start and TTK, was 2,273.07. So let's move on to the budget status report for the general fund. Again, through April 30th of 2025. Beginning with our revenues. So our total revenues, we were at 67.19% of our budgeted revenues being received, which is right around where we should be at this point in time. Our projected was 66.89. Our local source revenues year-to-date through April we were at 88.01%. And the projection was 82.45. State revenues, we were at 66.37%. The projection was 65.08. And the federal source revenues were at 46.36. Or I'm sorry, 46, the small print here, 46.36%. And the projection was 67.07. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So the big picture for our revenues. And Jackie, if you could please show the numbers at the bottom. Thank you. So our budgeted general fund revenues in our budget, $44,019,842. We projected at this point in time that we would have received $29,444,737. And our actual current year-to-date through April revenues were at $29,578,056. Next slide, please. So moving on to our expenditures. So our projected year-end fund balance as a percent of our budgeted expenditures has increased to 5.59%. And that's up from 4.31 last month. And if we look back at January, we were at 2.76. So we've really come a long way in the last few months. Our total expenditures actual year-to-date, 65.88% of our expenditures through April. We projected we'd be at 67.53. So we're spending about 2% less than we had planned. So, and that's due to the focus and attention we have been putting into the effort into cutting costs. Our salaries and benefits actual year-to-date percentage, 64.08% were actual through April. The projection was that we would have spent 66.73. So again, showing here that our efforts towards reducing costs are being reflected here in our actual year-to-date costs. Basic ed actual year-to-date percentage was 66.14. Our projected year-to-date, 68.42. Let's go on to the next slide. So our budgeted expenditures are $44,524,307. And our projected expenditures, $30,066,980. But our current actual expenditures through April were $29,333,152. Moving on to the next slide. This has a breakout for special education. And our allocation for the year for our special education programs are $5,321,414. So far, our revenues in special ed amount to $3,479,680, so it's 65.39% of our revenues have been collected, and that's right where we ought to be at this time of year. Our expenditures through April were $3,802,395, and the difference between our revenues and expenditures are $322,715. Although there's a little catching up with special education, especially with the IDEA portion, because the grant claims, we spend the money first and then we get reimbursed later, so about a month later. So we don't really expect those to be matching at any given point in time until we get to year end. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. This shows our fund balance history, and our fund balance through April was $2,658,343. And then when we look at May and June and on through August, those are projections. And June has been a particular area of concern, because in June we received just a 6% apportionment. Actually May and June, but kind of it snowballs. So by June, with getting a 5% apportionment in May and a 6% apportionment in June, that's just 11% in those 2 months. Compared to July and August, where those 2 months combined, we get 22.5%. And so by June, typically that's a lean month for school districts in Washington. So our projection shows that our fund balance to be somewhere around $141,713. Well, this number has been changing the last few months. Last month it was showing minus $141,713. That's below the zero line there. But if you remember last month, it was minus $711,876. And going back to January, it was minus $1,957,436. So again, just another reflection of how our efforts have been bringing that dollar amount closer and closer to that zero line. But we're still not showing quite above, and we're going to talk about that next on our plans for mitigating that. But as you can see, our efforts are paying off, and we're getting better in our position here for June. This is showing that our projected year-end fund balance will be around $2.5 million. You can see that number there, $2,488,302, which is actually above what we budgeted back in August. So again, just another reflection that our efforts, we're showing progress. Our efforts are paying off. And that concludes the budget status report for the general fund.
Very good. All right.
So now we're going to move on to board resolution number 03-G-25. And what this is, this resolution is for an emergency advance payment of our apportionment for the month of June. And the reason for this is because we want to make sure that our fund balance and our cash flow in the month of June is healthy enough that we can support all of our normal costs in payroll and normal costs in accounts payable. We don't want to be in a situation where we don't have enough cash flow to cover those expenditures. And so as a safety measure, we're asking OSPI to give us an advancement on our apportionment out of our July and August apportionment and to pay us that in June. Now again, our June is 6%, and July is 12.5, and August is 10. So really it's our money, we're just getting it sooner. So, and we're doing that as a safety measure. So what we're asking OSPI to do is give us $500,000 out of July and August in our June apportionment. This is a safety measure. We might not need that whole 500, but we don't want to be in a situation where we didn't calculate it correctly, and we don't even want to be a dollar under. And so a dollar amount that we feel, well, we didn't necessarily need that amount, we're just saving it, and we're going to be using it in July and August. Now, that does mean that our July apportionment will be $300,000 less than it would have been. And our August apportionment will be $200,000 less than it would have been, because we have to pay that back by the end of this fiscal year.
All right. So any discussion, or I guess I'll have to do that. So I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 03G25, Emergency Advancement of Basic Education Allocation.
I move that we approve resolution 03-G-25, emergency advancement of basic education allocation.
Okay, any discussion?
I'm just grateful for the efforts to get that number to where we're only asking for 500,000. To see how that has changed just in the last few months has been pretty impressive, and I hope that there's some way that we can show that to the community.
Oh, agreed,
But,
agreed.
yeah.
Well, I think really looking at that budget report and seeing what we're pulling in and what we're going out, right? This is the first time I've seen it where it's flipped, right? Which is great. And I think if we keep doing that, then that's just, right, we will be in a good spot. So, any other discussion? All right, all in favor of approving Resolution 03G25, Emergency Advancement of Basic Education Allocation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
you.
Thank all of you.
Let's just give it- Arla, you got lead drop.
I do
update.
not.
Okay. So we'll take a 5-minute recess at this point.
Perfect.
Anybody's got to use the restroom, we will reconvene here at 7:05. All right, it's 7:05. We'll come back to order. So next on the agenda is I'll entertain or do we just designate that one?
Which one?
The WIA. Do we have to have a
It's
motion
a
for that?
resolution that needs.
It's a resolution. You have to do the resolution.
All right, so I will entertain a motion for the resolution 04G25 WIA authority of nominations to take that responsibility.
I nominate Nick Thomas to take on that responsibility.
All right,
I second that if we can second
Okay.
it.
yep. All right, well, we'll make it easy. All in favor of Nick being our WIA rep for the next year, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
And
Nick,
then,
you're the guy.
You
And
voted
then-
aye.
Sounds good, thank you.
and then do we make a motion to approve this for G25?
Yeah, you have to
Okay.
do that.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve 04G25 as Nick being the delegating authority of WIA.
I make a motion to approve and adopt resolution 04G25 delegating Nick Thomas as authority to the WIA.
All right, any discussion? None heard, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. All right, moving on to number 7 here. We don't have any monitoring report.
It's like a clear crystal pool.
Okay. Policy review. Any discussion on ER11, the district calendar?
No.
All right, none heard. Let's move on to the adjournment. Any other comments, Jackie? None? All right, we'll turn to the good of the order. Let's start down there with Arla.
I will just say, if you haven't already and you need a pick-me-up, go see Mean Girls at North Mason High School. It's really funny and the kids do such a good job and it's just, yeah, it's a great show.
Very good. Nick?
Yeah, I mean, we already discussed it, but being a parent and hearing about an accident and
Oh my God.
I actually was in a group of people that happened to be, even though I was in Silverdale, there were parents in there that were getting the same notifications, and instead of it being a Chicken Little, the sky is falling, what's happening? I was very impressed because the people in that room were very happy with how quickly information was being passed on, how quickly they were being updated. Even the next day, they were very grateful for the way the staff handled it. So just again, I know we discussed it, but again, kudos to Belfair and to those staff members and teachers that made the best of a very unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
But yes.
Yeah. Well, I run a small private-ish food pantry on Mondays, and one of my friends that was driving to me that day was in the front of that, and it hit her front, popped her tires, and none of the kids, nobody inside, not a scratch on them, but their front tires were flat. And it was they had a good story out of it, but it was a very sad thing. But I wanted to thank the Bulldog Boosters for the post that they put out, and we got it out on the network there, but it was really nicely written with those really cool pictures. And then just a really quick, the Kiwanis Garage Sale is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and that's a wonderful give back to the Kiwanis. So visit right down here across from Belfair on Friday, because that's one of my favorite places to frequent on those days.
I love that. My grandfather used to price that thing all the time, and that was his favorite time.
I get
Ask Don about it, and he'll tell you all about it.
really good prices there on some really amazing things. It's surprising, so go and check it out.
Cool.
Very good. Dana?
Well, I do want to add my comments to those of the board members already, that we are very proud of our staff at Belfair and how well they handled a very terrible situation and kept kids safe and kept kids emotionally safe and worked really hard to contribute to the safety of the community members involved in that accident. And so we're just very proud of them.
Very much so.
And I need to remind you, there are a lot of things coming at the end of the year, and we'll be getting all sorts of notes from Jackie, from Parent Square, from the buildings about all of the things that are going on, but particularly want to make sure that you make note of, I'm going to pull it up here, I guess I'm not going to pull it up. The Senior Awards Ceremony is on Tuesday, June 3rd, in 2 weeks at 6 p.m. And the community organizations that give awards are really excited about the honors that they're presenting this year. We had more students than we have ever had, I think, complete their not binders this year. They were online portfolios. And we learned some things, and I'm sure that process will get even better in the years ahead. But it's a very wonderful time to celebrate our kids, some of our kids who are graduating. So if you can be there, please do.
Very good. All righty. I'll give you a second.
Graduation is what time?
The Senior Awards Ceremony is at
No,
6 p.m. Graduation is at 7:30 on Friday the 13th.
June
Of
13th.
June, yes.
Yep.
Sneaks up.
And then what did you, we said this before, but the graduation day, what is that again? June
June
13th.
June
13th.
13th.
June 13th, right down here.
Yep.
And we'll do our
We'll have our parking
pray for no
spots
rain.
Last day of school is the 18th, right? 18th?
Yep.
And 19th, 18th.
7 p.m., not 7:30.
So-
Thank you.
Remember,
Wait, graduation's
are you
at
doing the same
7?
parking
Apparently,
that we had
yes.
last year?
Mhm.
Remember for graduation that for us, where we parked last year will be the same
behind Hawkins.
Yeah,
behind
can we get a shuttle up there?
Yes, if
I'm
you're
not
up
gonna be able to
there,
walk down this time. I'm being
Joan,
this thing.
or they'll have the
Okay,
carts running down.
that'll be good.
Cool.
Only thing I got is softball team made it to districts. They did awesome. They won one game, their first game, lost their second game, but it was super close, and then lost the last game, but it was super close. So they were only really 2 wins away from going to state, which is huge from a team last year that just got blown out when they went to districts. So I'm super proud of all those girls. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, past that, that's all I have. Nicole?
Apologies, I had to work late today. One thing is I attended the WASDA regional meeting. South Kitsap hosted it this year, and saw some old faces and some new faces, and it was really great hearing the things that South Kitsap is implementing, and I jotted down some notes, and I'll share some of the resources at the summer board retreat that I am starting to plan, and hopefully I can get you all more information on that. And then the other thing was, and somebody may have also already said this, apologies, I went and saw Mean Girls, and I took my son and his girlfriend from Bremerton High, and they loved it. Like she was really amazed. And I always think it's really cool when someone from a bigger school in a bigger school district thinks that we do an incredible job, because we have far fewer resources. And so just incredibly proud of those students. There's a couple of new faces on that stage that I hadn't seen in the previous musicals, and just their talent blew me away. Awesome. I'm just like, I want to know that kid's name. I got to keep an eye on that one. So yes, thank you.
Very good.
That's wonderful.
All right. Well, we are going to take a,
You can do the self-assessment.
yeah, let's do the self-assessment,
That's me. Okay.
and then we'll, actually,
Who is that? Is that you, Arla?
Okay, we are now all present. Should I say 4 or 5 of us? Let's say 4 and a
They're
half.
4.5. That's fair.
Nicole, I'm gonna just write in here,
Nicole
Nicole
was running.
came at 5.
7:10.
Okay, so the agenda was well planned to focus on the real work of the board. I think all of our general meeting behavior was satisfactory. Our governance principles were followed, yes. And we did not write any new policies. So that's NA, but for the rest of our governance principles review, I am going to say that yes, we followed those principles. So I overall rank us as satisfactory for today's meeting.
all right, we are going to adjourn into executive session, and we'll be back at
Let's.
7:45?
45, so if we go at 7, if it starts at 7:20 until about 7:55? 7 or 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. We'll come back at 8 o'clock.
Okay.
Let's come back at 7:45.
Whatever time.
Then we can
And then I'll
always,
extend it.
add time.
Okay, 7:45, so we're entering executive session.